when dealing with God means having no beginning or no end. Having no beginning or no end. You know, this is really hard for us to comprehend because everything that we are aware of can be traced back to its beginning. We discussed this last week. Everything can be traced back and back and back to its starting point, and that starting point is God. But God doesn't have a starting point, and that puts him outside of our realm of understanding. One young man defined God's eternity this way: it is duration without beginning or end, without bounds or dimension, present without past or future. His eternity is youth without infancy or old age, life without birth or death, today without yesterday or tomorrow. That gets us confused. We must be careful because with our limited understanding, we have allowed the word to be hijacked. When we are in a long, boring stretch of road, we say, that took forever, or it seems like it took an eternity. If you watched the old Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all the people were looking for or trying to get the everlasting gobstopper. What does that mean? Well, in the way we use it, it means something that lasts a really long time, because being without a beginning or end is outside our scope of understanding. But because of this, God has chosen to reveal himself using words that we understand, time words, to help us get a grasp of who he is. In the passage which we'll be reading in Revelation in a little while, it says he which is, which was, which is to come. In the passage that was just read in Psalm 90, before the mountains. These are all time words. How else could we get any glimpse of the eternality of God if he didn't use words that we understood? But we have to be careful here. And I'm going to get just a little deep, but hang on, okay? We have to be careful because God often uses words to describe himself so that we can understand him. He brings it down to our level. And this is very gracious for him to do. But we have to be cautious that we don't take those words the other way and try to infer things about God from them. Great error comes from that. You say, what did you just say? I don't understand that. God takes words that we understand to help us understand him. He uses those words concerning himself. That's okay. But if we turn those words around and infer things back about God, we get ourselves into trouble. Let me illustrate it. When the kids were little, we would travel on these long trips. And thank the Lord for modern electronics. Well, not so modern anymore. We had a VCR and a TV set in the back seat. Remember the days of VCRs? And the kids would say, how long till we get there? Now, how do you answer that to a 6-year-old kid? If you say 30 minutes or 8 hours, there's nothing in their brain that they can relate to. But on the trips, they like to watch reruns of Hogan's Heroes. So, Hogan's Heroes were a half-hour show. I would do the math in my head, and I would say, if we had 3 hours to go, I'd say, we are 6 Hogans away. Now, this worked in their world because it brought something they didn't understand down to the level they could understand it because they've already watched an episode of Hogan's Heroes. They know how long that is. And they got to watch 6 of those and we'll be there. So it brought it down to their level. This worked very, very well. But think of the difficulties if they would have taken that information and started the other way with it. Suppose they tried to infer things about life from this. They might infer that time is measured in Hogans. They might go to the store and look for a watch that has Hogan time on it. they might start to debate whether Hogan Measurements is with or without commercials. Do you understand? When the information is I gave it to them so they would understand, it works that way. But if they turn it around and start trying to infer things the other way, it becomes a problem. There's almost no end to the craziness that might be inferred from that information that I use to help them understand. And so it is with God. He has revealed himself to us using words and concepts that we understand. But we have to be cautious about turning those back around and inferring things about him concerning them. Much of the great controversies amongst Bible believers stems from this mistake. They are trying to infer back things about God and how he operates from what he has told us from his on so that we could understand. God has used time words to enable us some level of understanding, but in reality, he is totally outside of the realm of time. That's hard for us to get a hold of. C.S. Lewis offered this illustration. He said, if you think of a sheet of paper that goes forever that way and forever that way, and then you draw on it a really short line, the paper is eternity. And that really short line is time. Time is encompassed in eternity, but it's only a very small part of it. Time begins and ends in the infinite expanse of eternity. That's okay, kind of gets you start going. Let's try another one. I don't think you want to take this too far, but it will help get you in the ballpark. I have an interesting set of DVDs on American history, a decade at a time. If I take that DVD and I put it into the DVD player and I begin to play that, the sequences of history are going sequentially, frame by frame, the history is moving forward. At the same exact time, I'm outside of that realm. It's running through, see, piece by piece by piece by piece, and yet the time that it's going by on that, I'm not aging while this is happening. I am totally outside of what that is. I watch it, but I'm not aging. Time on the DVD player and my time are totally different. I can take that DVD and I can put it in my pocket. And nothing that does not affect me at all. I can take that DVD and put it into a machine with the right equipment. I can alter the frame by frame on that DVD. It runs sequentially, but yet I am totally outside the realm of it. And what I do, what it does has no effect on me. I can affect it if I want to. Now, we don't want to go too far on this, but it kind of gets you into the realm of God is not in the realm of time. He can see it just like you on the DVD player can go frame by frame. You can skip it forward. You can go back and you can see wherever you want on this. God is outside of the realm of time. And we do not affect him, but he can affect if he desires to. It gets us at least a glimpse. Now, all that being said, even if God had not chosen to reveal himself as eternal, say he hadn't told us that he was eternal, we would still have to infer that he is because of all of his other attributes. Last week we discussed God is self-existent. What could ever cause him to cease to exist? If he's self-existent, there's nothing that could cause him to cease to exist. So therefore, he would have to be eternal. God is perfect. If he's perfect, then what could ever cause him to fail? He would have to be eternal. God is unchangeable. How then could he ever be different than he is? If he was, he would not be unchangeable. Because of his other attributes, even if God had not told us he was eternal, we would have to infer it because his other attributes demand that he be so. Our God is eternal. He's outside of the realm of time. He is without beginning and without end. Now, we're going to sing a song here, and it's going to be a little bit difficult. Some of these older songs are outside of our real realm of singing. And after that, Spencer's going to read a bunch of passages dealing with the eternity of God. If you have a pen, I challenge you to mark those passages, the piece in that passage that deals with God's eternality. Use it to think and study and see what the Bible actually says about God's eternality. If we're merely dealing with Bible doctrine, then we could end at this point and you would have had the proof text and the explanation of the attribute of God. But that's not what we're after here. What we're after is a closer walk with the Lord. What we're after is knowing God and having it make a difference in our life. So what difference should the eternality of God make in your existence? The fact that He is eternal, what difference does that make to you? What effect should it have? I have 4 effects that this should have in your life. There'll be more, but I've got 4 tonight. Number 1, we should redeem the time that we have. We should redeem the time that we have. You know, this time thing is a very short-lived deal. We have our few years here on the planet, and then they're over. But however, in this brief time that we have, we are able in a very unique way to glorify God. Here on this planet, in our realm of time, we are faced with evil. We are faced with wrong. We are faced with a vast majority of people who despise God. But it is in the darkest time that the little light shines brightest. We have this brief time where we can glorify God, when it can make a difference and play an eternal role. But time is not forever. In heaven, we will all be praising and worshiping God in the presence of angels and some very unusual creatures. But will anybody around us be affected? Will anyone say, in heaven while you're singing, will anyone say, you know what? I have been rejecting God here, and now I see clearly. Nobody will say that in heaven. In that day, we will all be in complete unity in our Lord, and we will worship the Lord together for eternity in complete unity. But in this brief span of time, we are offered a unique opportunity to glorify God when it makes a difference that can play a role in eternity. Now, as we worship God, now as we honor the Lord, people around us can be affected, and that has an eternal purpose. God's eternality should cause us to redeem the time that we have the best that we can. Second thing, effect it should have on us, we should live in light of eternity. We should live in light of eternity. Tennyson wrote, "Thou wilt not leave us in the dust. Thou madest man, he knows not why. He thinks he was not made to die. And thou hast made him, thou art just." Isn't that an interesting phrase? He thinks he was not made to die. It is within man to suspect that he was not meant to cease. There somehow he is connected with God, and thereby he is an unending creature. Now this knowledge within, that we were not meant to die, we have this eternal, we have this knowledge within us, we suspect this is true. And it causes man to do many, many strange things. But we who know Christ, it should cause us to live in light of eternity. Paul said, if in this life we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. But since God is eternal, and therefore we are eternal, living like this world is an end of itself is foolishness. When I was at Meyer Hall, I used to give an illustration quite often. I had a calendar that is a full year. So one piece of paper, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, it's got the full year on the calendar. So you can look at all 12 months on one piece of paper. And I'd say to the kids, look, if I took this piece of paper and this is 2020, and I print the next calendar, which would be 2021, I put that behind that. And I print the next one, 2022 and 2023, and I keep doing that. And I keep printing calendars, okay, when I get about an inch thick, that would be about my lifespan. If I'd started when I was born, 100 pieces of paper is about an inch thick. And so that stack of 1 inch would represent my lifespan. Okay, you understand that? Now, if I kept printing, and I printed, and we'll just use this building, I printed and I kept printing, stacking the year behind the year behind the year, and I went out to Vandalia Road. The stack went that far. You'd say, that's quite a few years. And if I kept printing, and we went all the way down and got to Interstate 80, and we headed east, and we went clean across the ocean, we came all the way back around the entire world and came back, still printing calendars, one right after the other. And that stack of calendars stretched from here around the planet. Now, how much time do you have there? We focus on that 1 inch we call life, but in reality, eternity is so much more than that. All of those years, of course, will be outside of the realm of time at that point. But all of that is when we realize we are eternal, God is eternal, and because that we are eternal, we better not live for that 1 inch, but for the rest of that is where we better be focusing our existence. We should live in light of eternity. Number 3, we should rest. We should rest. The eternality of God should cause us to rest. You know, we get so agitated by the little things that happen around us. They loom big and they cast big shadows and drive us to fear and frustration. But God is eternal. Therefore, we are eternal. And those pesky little things of life are but little gnats. And in light of eternity, they don't mean a thing. They're just like little gnats flying around our head. Bernard of Cluny writes, brief life here is our portion. Brief sorrow, short-lived care. The life that knows no ending, a tearless life, is there. There God, our King and portion, in fullness of His grace, we then shall see forever and worship face to face. When we look at God as an eternal God, all of these little things that we're worried about today mean so little. And it'll cause us to rest in the fact that God is eternal and these things are not going to really matter. We redeem the time. We live in light of eternity. We rest. And number 4, as always, we worship. The eternality of God should cause you to worship. You have a God who is so great, He lives in a totally different realm than you. Yet He understands you completely because He entered this world as one of us. The thought of that should drive us to our knees in absolute worship. God is eternal, and we should live in light of eternity, redeeming the time, resting, and worshiping such a great God.